heavy. Wow.
That's a smooth track.
I just every time I hear it, it's like the first time I heard it.
It's like the first time I heard Saint Anger.
Crazy band. What a legacy, you know. All
I
the
mean,
the roller coaster rides they've been on. I actually think Saint Anger is a great album.
you
And
heard
it's
it.
like
You heard
weird.
it here.
You heard it on VodPod, all 10 of you. It's maybe 10, right? Maybe 7.
I think. I think. I think we're warming up to 8.
I hope. I hope. But no, it's a cool album. It's got a lot of depth lyrically that their other albums don't have, I would say.
Agreed. Agreed.
And honestly, the untuned snare drum is kind of cool.
Yeah. You know what? Do something different.
Exactly. It's not the same thing. Because honestly, I love the first 4 albums, like every other Metallica fan. You know, you get
Yeah.
Kill
Who
'Em All,
does?
Ride the Lightning, Master Puppets, Justice for All. Those are great albums. But at the end of the day, you gotta, I mean, you don't have to change. You never have to change what you do. But it's kind of just like, I don't know. I thought a new kind of thing was refreshing.
Yeah. Change it up. Well, how have you been?
I've been well. Well, how have you been, dude?
I have been well as well.
Always watching. I'm always watching.
Before we get into what we watched, which was always watching, have you seen anything recently that you wanna talk
Oh yeah.
about, or just because we're literally it's when we're recording this, it's October 29th, so Halloween's a little bit away. I was redoing my list of like what I actually watched this Halloween, and I'm only at 16 films. I can't. There's no way I can reach 31 films by
Dude, for
Halloween. So
real?
I can't do it.
Do you know what I'm at right now?
What?
76.
Oh my God. Give me
I,
30 of those. I'll
I
I'll
I will say though, it's not all October. I've been celebrating Halloween from September 1st till now. So that's 2 months of movie watching. But sometimes it's a double feature late at night.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's a movie at 5 a.m. when I wake up, so it really depends. But
It sucks because I also started I've logged some stuff that I watched in September and I still can't seem to get to 31.
all right,
What was
I'll fast track some movies over to you. I'll send them over.
Let me get those digital codes.
Oh, yeah, that's how it is, huh?
What was the last thing you watched?
Aside from always watching, which was what I last watched, I watched Bride of the Werewolf, which is a 2019 VOD flick from Sterling Entertainment. Sterling is the man behind Camp Blood, the series,
Hmm.
uh, as well as I think Witchcraft and a few others. Those types of films. Kind of horror, like low budget horror films. He's been doing it, I think, since the 90s, I want to say, maybe even a little earlier. But yeah, so I checked that out. That was a fun movie. It was micro budget. They did the whole werewolf costume, and there's also a mummy appearance in the film, which I thought was worth noting. Yeah, I also watched some Argento films, Suspiria, Tenebrae, and Phenomena. So that was pretty wild, I gotta say.
Did you see the Suspiria remake?
I have not seen that.
I haven't seen either. I wanted to watch the original before seeing the remake, but the remake looked pretty cool.
It did look cool. I want to check it out. Definitely want to check it out. But yeah, Suspiria is messed up, man. That's a weird movie. I mean, I enjoyed it. There's a lot to like about it. So it's just very some horrific stuff. The effects and all that. The way they approach it, it's pretty violent.
That seems to be like what I have heard about Argento. I mean, I've seen one movie. I cannot think of the name of it, but I do remember the effects being like really off-putting, very like just like crazy gore, like
Yeah.
graphic and
Very bloody, like bright red blood sometimes and stuff.
yeah, yeah.
It's wild. But yeah, I mean, so that was a cool experience, dipping my toes in that. Maybe gonna check out some more soon. Um, but yeah, it was a good time.
The
Speaking of
only
good times,
yeah,
tell me
always
what.
watching.
Tell me the good work. Yeah.
um, Are we jumping into always watching a
I
Marble
think
Hornet Story?
I've been always watching this film since we decided it.
I
So
just watched it um, before we are doing this episode. You watched it yesterday, so you watched a Marble Hornet Story. Um,
I had the night to kind of sit and think, and it
um,
was I had a good time.
I had a good time too. I'm just going off of why I picked this. I love found footage movies. Um, one of my favorite found footage movies is As Above, So Below because it took what everyone was doing at the time and kind of like separated itself from everything. Where the first like hour of it is more like a found footage thriller that doesn't really tap into horror right away, and then it goes into horror at the end, which I always thought was really cool. So um,
I,
I have always like I've got no issues watching found footage movies. I think in terms of low budget, found footage one of the best ways to go to make a convincing movie. You just have to have a good plot to base that found footage around because I have noticed that with found footage movies, people become very, very critical very, very quickly if one thing doesn't make sense. But I was excited to do a found footage movie because, in the realm of VOD and micro budgets, this is a really cool way to make a scary movie on a really small budget. And then also, I hadn't seen any of the I'm using air quotes, the Slender Man stuff because in this movie the Slender Man is called Operator, but um, this seemed to be jumping on the bandwagon. There was a Slender Man movie that came out in like major theaters, I think like last year or something, but I missed that too. But I've always heard about it, so I thought this would be a cool place to start. I don't know. The poster looked really cool as well. But I had a good time. How about you? Like when just initially going into it?
yeah, so going into it, I was the same way. I'd never seen any Slender Man films before. And I know that this isn't really exactly that, but it's definitely like harkens to it and kind of has that vibe and feel and look. Um, but in the past, going to Family Video and stuff, before I moved, I would see um, a lot of cool Slenderman DVD covers. And so many times, I can't tell you how many times I held up the cover. It was like so close to like, I'm going to rent this tonight. And then I didn't. And so it's cool though, because of doing that, now I finally watched one. And because I waited, it was both of our first times with these
Yeah.
types of films. That's cool. And like you said though, found footage, I was excited going in because we haven't watched a found footage movie yet, for an episode on this. And I like you, I enjoy the genre. I think it's cool, it's creative, it's sort of a version of like next generation filmmaking. It's paving that way with grabbing a handy cam, coming up like you said with a good story, have a likable character or two, and you know, kind of kind of work it from there.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely like, horror is supposed to I mean, most horror, the way I kind of watch it is by putting myself in the position of the people that I'm watching on screen. So what better way to do that than film like 70% of it from the perspective of a camera? It's almost like you're witnessing it the same as what they're witnessing it. So I think that uh, found footage is like a way to potentially raise the chill the chill factor a little bit
Yeah,
more. I mean, Blair Witch Project is a great example of like a very simple movie, but because it's shot through a camera and it's pretty much isolated in the woods with just like a group of people and a camera, it's way more chilling and way more scary than it would have been if it was shot cinematically.
that I think that yeah, that's an important part to bring up because now Blair Witch that went nationwide, right?
Hmm.
All theaters. Yeah, so I mean that's just right there. That's a big turning point because that kind of film on a massive scale that's pretty accessible to most people. Um, that was sort of probably most film, audiences' first experience with found footage type, and yeah, I got to imagine on a big screen that film had to have been extremely intense in a theater.
I do remember. I mean, I was like, I had to have been like 6 or 7 when that movie came out, but I remember when people were saying like it's real footage because they had a website up that said it was real. They had like there was like very limited. I don't think the movie starts with any credits. They were playing this off like everyone who sat in that theater was watching real footage and that was filmed from like retracted from a camera. And I think, like you said, that's a huge game changer for like film. I mean, most films are always like you start out with the intro credits and then you go into these really cinematic like movies are very by the books most of the time. So to have a movie like this, which is shot just handheld and supposed to feel real, is definitely like that's very different. So while now it's not that unique, I think if you look at Blair Witch, like that's definitely like that's crazy that it got into main theaters.
Yeah, it really is because it's probably harder and harder nowadays because if you're above, I guess I wouldn't say above the VOD game, but like if you're in the ballpark of we're making a film to go to theaters or it's going to compete to try to, we're going to try to get enough money to put it into theaters across the country, and you're competing with a superhero film that's going to take up 5 of the screens in a theater.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's hard, man. That's got to be really hard to get a little found footage horror film out there, like that's got to be difficult.
Which is why Blumhouse is actually pretty sweet because I believe they have a thing where it's like they prefer to take on films that are below a certain number of like budget. So
Right.
and then they like look at Paranormal Activity. Like that movie was probably done with the same budget as a lot of these VOD films, and it's proven to be one of the most successful found footage films of all time.
And then that was like another game changer, though. You know what I mean? Like it was like almost like the multicam
Yeah.
footage, where
Yeah.
it's almost like, yeah, it's very interesting how found footage has also sort of morphed a little bit. So I mean, just jumping right in, it's sort of like you have this character played by who's he played by, Tim?
Well, you told me this. I didn't even realize this. So one of my favorite movies of all time is Just Friends. I'd like to be buried with that movie. Um,
Film, great film.
but I
I
didn't
really
even I didn't even realize you were Chris Marquette. That's the younger brother of what's his face? Deadpool.
yeah, Deadpool's little bro.
It's crazy. He's all grown
It's
up.
wild. Yeah, and like seeing him in this, I was like, right when I saw him, I'm like, this dude looks so familiar. I'm like, he is definitely like a name of sorts. You know what I mean? Like he's a face, I would say. Like even though he's not an A-lister, he's a good actor and he's good to have, I think, as a lead character. And so
I
right off
I
the
agree.
bat, jumping in. Yeah, so I mean, I knew you'd like it. I was like, oh shit, Tim's gonna love this now. Um but yeah, I really dug it. I jumping in, I was like, this is interesting. He's kind of an odd character. The things he does, choices he makes are kind of weird. But just jumping in though, they basically discover a box of videotapes. Um, he works for a news company, right? Wasn't that kind of the thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so they find these tapes, and there's this weird sort of haunt uh, figure that they see in the videos, and it so long story short, it marks its victims, and it like drives you insane and stuff. And this whole figure is the operator, and he's after you and stuff. So that's how I would sum it up.
Yeah. I
Pretty
think
creepy.
that's
Pretty creepy.
pretty spot on.
It's not the best, but that's just it might like my description is not the best. But I was just spitballing, trying to think of what first came to mind.
Yeah, I think what one thing that kind of stuck out right away is our main character. normally the guy behind the camera can sometimes be what people decide to like hate right away. I remember when Cloverfield came out, people hated TJ, what's his face, TJ Miller.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
they hated his character, uh, but I actually think that our boy from Just Friends, I thought he had just the right level of like uh normality and like dick personality, and it was just the right blend. Like there was no obnoxious moments, but when he decided to be funny, it was actually like pretty clever and like pretty original, and it did feel like things he would say. Like sometimes you get the guy behind the camera saying things that like you would never say out loud, but because it's a movie you have to say it. I felt like this was very appropriate, what he was saying.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. It's like it's how do I how do I put this? It didn't feel forced. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's times when it's just not fitting, where with the dialogue, the face that's saying it. And so I think that's kind of an important part, to really sell it and believe it, make you believe it, especially in found footage where you're trying to give this illusion that what you're watching is a real thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, going off that, I was like, this is pretty cool. I believe it. The tapes with Dan and his family and stuff, like that was some weird stuff.
That was creepy.
Um, yeah, there was a lot of like good, like I guess we was it the creative fixes? Is that what you called it?
Yeah. Like creative solves and stuff.
Creative solves, yeah. And I think there's a fair amount of that in this film too, because you got to imagine the budget couldn't have been massive.
No, I mean, if you look at what their locations were, you have like a couple hotel rooms, you have the main house, you have the newsroom, and then you also have the other guy's house, I think. And like to be honest, like those are could have all been friends locations. And like there's a scene in a supermarket where you can tell like it just seemed like someone was doing these people favors to help make their movie that they want to make. So I love that. Like I love seeing like nice different locations, but you can tell that like they're inexpensive locations if anything.
Yeah, very true. Um, it's it's sort of like what they had a grocery store. Did
Yeah,
you?
they had a grocery store, and they had also, I forgot to mention, like an insane asylum as well.
Right, that part was cool.
Yeah,
And I liked how they sort of did that thing with that character's face in the insane asylum.
that was cool. I mean, you don't really get a lot of practical effects in this movie. Like, I mean, you don't really get much effects to be honest in general, but
Yeah,
I did appreciate that these little few moments where there's some gross out moments or some practical like makeup. It looked good. I mean, one of the things for me that I thought was interesting, especially working on like a smaller budget, you have a central like antagonist, and that's the operator. But what's cool is that instead of trying to make his like actions feel scary and realistic, which might not have ended up that way because it's found footage, because you don't really have like, some of the special effects to do it. I thought that the way it operates other people once you get that marking on you was a cool way to like make a more effective or more realistic and believable like kill scenes, and also just like kind of like still let the operator be creepy without it being a little bit like just some human running in a suit, like it was cool
yeah,
that he lurks in the background the whole time. um,
yeah. Lots of moments
yeah,
of
and
that.
and I will say too, because of that, it made me watch the movie where every time like this movie was framed really well. A lot of people think like, oh, I could make a found footage movie. I have a camera. I can just run around upstairs and shake the camera. But if you watch this movie, along with other found footage films, this movie in particular though, the way that each scene is framed had me looking in the windows and had me looking in the background because that's where the operator would be. And that was really creepy, especially when they didn't choose to put him in the background. Like they could have easily just put him in the background of every single shot, but they strategically put him in some places and then not in some places to make you definitely like, while there's a time lapse of our main character just like laying on the couch and there's nothing really going on screen, you still are looking at those background windows to see if the operator's going to walk by or he's going to be lurking in the background. So I thought that was creepy.
Yeah, definitely. Like a good example too is when he's in like one of the house for the first time when he's walking through at night with the camera. There was a lot of great moments of what's Marty the dog barking at, and you're just like, what's around that corner, man? Like,
Yeah.
those kinds of moments too of tension where there's like a mystery vibe to it where you're just like, oh God, how's this scene gonna end?
Yeah, and a lot of people always complain about jump cuts, and I have to say, this movie, when there's those scenes where he's walking down in the basement and it's dark and all you can see is like the light of from like the camera, they didn't really rely on jump cuts. It was just creepy atmosphere, and usually with the time when I thought it was going to be a jump cut, they didn't do it, which reminds me of when I first watched Insidious and I was like, yo, James Wan, you're the man. You didn't just do the classic jump cuts, the cat, you know, the
Yeah,
cat false scare. Like I really appreciated that about this movie.
definitely. I agree. Like it's a little refreshing, to kind of change it up and do this type of film for an episode because um I don't watch enough found footage to be like tired of it or anything like that. I find it to be a pretty enjoyable um type of movie. It's something that uh there's a lot of merit in it and a lot of creativity that goes into creating a whole entire feature film uh on a shoestring budget and mostly passion, I'd imagine, with a lot of these films that we're probably going to watch. But yeah, it's just to me, it was refreshing because also I haven't been like Slenderman out, like I haven't watched enough Slenderman to be like, oh, another Slenderman movie, or something, or like that type of thing.
Yeah.
So
I
that
am
it's
I am
pretty cool.
curious. I'm curious though, like much like the zombie genre and all that stuff, when you do a movie that is super saturated because everyone's doing it, or like the haunting of dot 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 movies, it's
Yeah.
it's always interesting if you I would be curious to watch a couple more Slenderman films down the line because then you can see like, all right, if you're gonna make a Slenderman movie, where do you differentiate yourself from everyone else? So while we don't have the Slenderman background, we do have the found footage background, and I agree. I try not to watch as much found footage in a row either. But I thought this movie was one of the better found footage films I've seen in a while. I mean, especially for like straight to DVD type of um, found found footage. This movie did a lot that was a little bit different. They didn't, this reminded me of Creep. Do you ever see Creep?
Yeah, dude. I've seen both actually, one and two. Mark Duplass, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
And
so good. I love those movies, dude.
that took like the regular found footage approach and did new things with it, which I think this movie is on the cusp of, which there's a lot of moments where I was like, that was cool because that's not something I've seen before. So,
It's awesome, dude.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, Creep to me it was creepy, it was off-putting, it was weird, and it was really good performance from Mark Duplass. So I was super sold on that type of found footage film as well. It just surprised the heck out of me when I saw it.
I think that's the challenge of doing found footage is like, how can we take a super tired genre and start doing new things? And in Always Watching's case, I think they picked and choose like they did a lot that was like the classic found footage, but I also applaud them on choosing like three or four things and improving on it and trying to do something unique because that's really what would make someone remember this movie. If it was just a carbon copy, which it wasn't, I think you know it wouldn't be as memorable. So definitely applaud them on that.
Very cool. Yeah, no, there's yeah, I think like with yeah, with like a film like this also, you and I don't have, you know, as we've sort of mentioned, we don't have the experience of like a ton of Slender Man lore and knowledge of that. So I'm not saying that this is like a great Slender Man film because I really don't know like how all that stuff is, you know, received and whatnot. But it makes me curious to kind of see that theatrical film. It makes me curious to see because I know there's a few like straight to video creepypasta Slenderman types of movies out there.
Yeah,
Um, and it makes me want to watch those, you know, and kind of see like, wow, like what did they do differently in this one? You know, if it's narrative or if it's found footage or like it's all supposed to kind of be like that. But then also, I found it interesting that this was based off of like that YouTube series, like that we were kind of chatting about. It was like based, it had a few years of work that was put into a web show, multiple seasons, 40,000 followers, I think, and the teen filmmakers, I believe, that made the show
damn.
sold the rights, right, to make for a production company or a filmmaker to make this movie. So I thought
That's
that's really
awesome.
cool. Yeah, it was interesting, right? Like, wow.
That's super inspiring. I mean, we always talk about like passion projects and stuff like that. And it's like, that is so awesome that you can start out doing a YouTube show, get some notoriety, and then sell your rights. I mean, that's like the dream, right? Like they got a full length film based off of their hard work. So I think
Right. Yeah.
that's awesome in itself.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a cool story, like backstory, you know, on the film. And I love that about all of these types of little movies. They have these cool stories behind the story, basically, you know, that a lot of movies, big or small, are gonna have cool. Wow, I remember the legal battle and Friday the 13th, you know, people always talk about these crazy
Yeah.
things, Paramount and stuff. And it's like, that's so interesting, you know, to wonder what happens behind the closed doors when they actually negotiate the costs and the rights and the money and it's wild. And then to see something on this scale where it was probably not quite the same, but obviously not the same, but it has, you know, a lot of kind of wow factors as well for how it came to be. Where you're just like, man, that's wild.
Yeah, I think that actually helps me a lot in VOD films because if I know like that there's some backstory to how this movie got made, it makes me want to watch it even more. It makes me watch it in a different lens. Um, I'm, I don't really want to get into it because that would actually be a pretty good episode. But what was that movie that we watched where the guy was part of the Getty family and he got
Oh yeah, Evil Within.
so that movie is one of those things where it's like if you didn't know the backstory, you probably wouldn't really give too much attention to that film, but knowing it when you're watching it, you're like you're kind of more sucked in. So this movie, knowing that it was based off of a YouTube show, I would love to see those, but just knowing that is makes me appreciate it a little bit more because I can now see like congrats guys, like your show got turned into a full movie. That's awesome.
Yeah, dude, that's it's it's a good little accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that Evil Within, that was a messed up movie, man. That was
Yeah.
some dark stuff.
We should actually we should watch that again and do an
Yeah,
episode.
we should, because I actually like that film quite a bit. I think that's a really cool movie.
So so Matt, you got a you got a movie for the next one?
I do. I have a cool little film. It's got a really cool cover on Tubi, and I'm excited to check it out, actually. It is called Death Day, and
Let me
is a
give it a search here.
2018 horror film. I think it goes by another name as well called The Campus. And it is, yeah, 2018 horror film. The Campus was the original title. It is now called Death Day. Um, and it's directed by Jay Horton. who I've actually met before, worked on a film set with him. He's a really cool guy, so I'm very excited to kind of see some of his work, you know?
That's awesome. This looks
Yeah,
I mean, I'm reading the a woman finds herself fighting an endless cycle of terror as she's brutally murdered, then resurrected again and again, losing pieces of her soul. So it looks like we've got a little bit of like uh, uh, maybe it's like a mock version of Happy Death Day, which I was kind of in the middle on. So I'm excited to see this. This is cool. We haven't really done one of the like close close films, like where it's like inspired by a major film. So this will be really
I,
fun.
yeah, no, that's what I'm thinking. It looks like it's got some practical effects too, so I always look forward to that kind of stuff in horror movies. And yeah, like I said, Jason Horton, Jay Horton, really talented guy, really nice guy when I met him. So I know he's probably made a pretty cool movie with this one.
The poster's great.
Yeah, I love the poster. And this is the poster on Tubi. I know that there's a couple posters out there on Google, but the one on Tubi has what looks kind of like a monster demon of sorts holding a bloodied up like birthday cake that says Death Day with one candle lit. It's a pretty cool cover. I like it a lot. That was kind of what pulled me in actually. There was the cover.
Yeah, I think for people who have seen Happy Death Day, this will pull them in too because the posters for that are very similar. So, um, which again, I mean, that's certainly one way to make someone watch your movie is to pull some inspiration from something that is known that people love. Like people love Happy Death Day. So I'm excited to see it. Having not really enjoyed Happy Death Day that much, I'm excited to see it too because I'd love to see someone else's take on something similar. So great choice.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And great choice on always watching. I
I'm still
enjoyed that.
watching it right now. I was watching the whole time we were doing this episode.
Oh, sweet. Oh, I gotta get back to watching, always watching. But hey, thanks for having me, man.
Thanks, Matt. As always, this is really fun. I mean, we're really getting a good little range here. So we did some found footage. Now we're gonna do one of the similar films. So I'll pick something really good next too.
Sweet, dude. Thank you, man. I'm looking forward to it. And thanks to anyone that's been listening along or watching along with us. I hope you guys check out Death Day for free on Tubi. Um, it's gonna be scary. It's gonna be a lot of death
In one day.
in one day.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Have a great day.
You too.